I grew up with my family going to the beach on a yearly basis. We vacationed in Ocean City, Maryland. And we spent many hours in the sun every summer.
And by the time Jessica Rogowitz was a teenager, she was also using tanning beds.
In high school, I started using tanning beds for special occasions, and then in college, I started using tanning beds on a regular basis, about 2 to 3 times a week. There were 42 bulbs, 54 bulbs, or 60 bulbs in the bed, so I chose the beds that had the 60 bulbs.
Jessica was fine until 2007, when she decided to have a mole removed from her knee.
I also noticed a new mole on my back that was darker than the rest of the moles on my body, and I went to my primary care physician and he removed both moles in his office. The mole that was on my back, that's the one that actually turned out to be melanoma.
Jessica was shocked. She was only 24 years old and had skin cancer.
I had no idea how damaged my skin was, and everyone believes that you're not going to be the one to get cancer, that you're going to live to be 100 years old.
Jessica was fortunate. The cancer had not spread, but as she looked back, she remembered the many sunburns she had over the years and the many hours she spent unprotected in the sun. From that time on, though, she took precautions. She stopped using tanning beds, applied sunscreen, and wore protective clothing when she was out in the sun. But 4 years later,
in 2011, I happened to notice another mole on the back of my right leg that was darker than the rest of my moles. And it looked very similar to the melanoma I had on my back. Dr. Eadington, my oncologist, removed the mole and it came back to be melanoma once again.
And it's not unusual for melanoma to return.
How are you doing?
Good, how are you?
Dr. Howard Eadington is a skin cancer specialist for the Allegheny Health Network.
Once you've had one, unfortunately, you're at higher risk of developing another. That doesn't mean it's going to happen, but you're more likely than somebody off the street that doesn't have a history of melanoma of developing another one.
But if caught in time, melanoma is highly treatable. The danger comes when it begins to grow and spread to other organs. Jessica was lucky that both times her melanoma was able to be cured with surgery.
Both in 2007 and 2011, my lymph nodes were clear. Mine was caught in stage 1 both times. And luckily, I was vigilant, and so once again, I was able to catch the melanoma early.
That's why it's important to know what melanoma looks like.
The disease itself is a disease of the melanocyte, which is a pigment-bearing cell. The melanoma can arise, it just comes out of nowhere, or it can arise in a mole. So what patients should look for is a changing mole, a new mole. Particularly worrisome are moles that are asymmetric, and really quite worrisome is a mole that bleeds. Now the classic melanoma, the borders are irregular, it's changing, meaning it might be getting bigger or changing colors. The classic melanoma is brown or black. That having been said, it is possible to have melanomas that are apigmented, and they may be pink or a variant of pink. Maybe we take a quick look at your cut. Sure.
But who's more at risk for melanoma?
That's where we did the operation, and it's healed up beautifully.
The disease can strike people of all ethnicities, but individuals with lighter skin, hair, and eyes have a greater chance of melanoma.
The typical type of the melanoma patient will be the fair-haired or red-haired person with blue eyes. That specifically has a tendency to burn on sun exposure as opposed to tan. These are people most frequently of Celtic origin that might have Germanic or British backgrounds.
People who have had a family history of the disease are also more at risk, and although melanoma accounts for only a small percentage of skin cancer cases, it remains one of the most deadly forms.
Crazy thing about melanoma is that in North America in the 30s or so, our likelihood of developing one as an adult would be 1 in 3,500. Now it's 1 in 70. It has become a huge public health issue in Australia, for example.
But not just Australia. Rates are rising here in Pittsburgh as well.
When I first started treating patients with melanoma, there really just wasn't that much melanoma in this area. Could all be managed by one doctor back then, really. Now there has been a huge increase. I would say we had office hours today, and I've probably seen 5 or 6 new melanomas just today alone. So that's one doctor one day, and you can multiply that by other doctors.
With one active daughter and another baby on the way, Jessica is doing all she can to spread the word about melanoma. It's why she started a local chapter of an organization called Miles Against Melanoma in Pittsburgh.
I really had all this, I guess, emotional baggage that I wanted to spread awareness. And it felt good to take a negative experience and turn it into something positive. And so our first 5K in 2012, we had around 600 people. And in 2013, that number grew to close to 800 people. So it really is nice to connect with other people who have experienced this disease or bring families together who've lost someone to melanoma.
But Miles Against Melanoma doesn't only promote awareness. The organization also raises funds that could someday lead to new treatments for the disease. For now, though, surgery remains the best option for doctors.
For primary melanoma, there really isn't a role for anything but surgery. Once it has then spread to the lymph nodes, surgery still remains the forefront treatment that we would recommend. Systemic disease, meaning the cancer's gone everywhere, that is now out of the realm of surgery, and medicine is going to be required.
In the future, researchers are also looking to a new batch of drugs to combat advanced melanoma. One that's already being used now is interferon, which uses the body's own immune system to destroy tumors.
Interferon is a drug that's been FDA approved for patients at high risk of melanoma to decrease the likelihood of tumor recurrence after successful surgical therapy.
It's medicine that's helping thousands of people with this sometimes fatal form of skin cancer.
My hope is that we can find a cure, and I also hope that we are doing our part within the organization to make people aware that the skin cancer can be deadly, that it is a real cancer like any other cancer, and no one's invincible from this.